Welcome to the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles. I'm here with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. So, Tracy, our special guest today is Dana Besbris. Did I say that right, Dana?
Yes, you did. That was perfect.
Yay! Bravo for Rebecca. So, Dana, training and coaching specialist, is excited to be introducing ZorCoach, powered by the Entrepreneur Source. ZorCoach's vision is to help emerging franchise brands to unlock their growth potential, forge meaningful connections, and revolutionize how the world perceives franchising. Dana brings over 16 years of franchise industry experience into training and international operations. Dana's unique career path took her from an executive assistant to an executive. This perspective informed her leadership philosophy, understanding that everyone has the ability to lead when allowed to do so in their own style. Dana, I'm so glad we finally got you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm so excited to be here.
I love the name Zora Coach. It reminds me of Zorko. That
Yeah,
is
Yes.
it
cool.
does, doesn't it?
So before we go there, I'd love to hear your origin story. Just, your journey into franchising. Where did it start? How did it come about?
Wow. To be honest with you, Tracy, I kind of accidentally fell into franchising. So I was young, much younger than I am now, was just kind of looking for my first real opportunity in a business to get my career kind of off the ground. Um, was very, very fortunate to meet Alan Fishman at the Alternative Board and came on board as his executive assistant. I did that role for quite a few years, but the greatest thing about that role was that Alan's mission was to make sure I understood why he was doing what he was doing. So during that whole time, whenever Alan made decisions or decided to do something new, he always took the time to explain to me why he was doing it
Mhm.
and what he intended to accomplish by doing it. So I really had a special chair there in that I was understanding exactly how the business was being run, why it was being run that way, and learned more in my time under Alan as his executive assistant than I could have in college or in an MBA program. It was the most practical and wonderful experience, educational experience I've had.
Wowza. It's so interesting because frequently when we have folks that technically are employees or are subordinates in many ways, we just assign tasks. I know I do. I need this by Thursday, I need this, whatever. But this idea of giving the why, giving
Yeah.
that big picture, I'm guessing it got you more bought in, right?
Absolutely. It was so easy to get on board with what was happening, right? And Alan wanted me to understand it. He also did want me to challenge it, which was great. So I always had the opportunity to ask questions, and he would hear me. Even if he didn't go with what I said, he always listened to me. And that was such a wonderful lesson, right? In terms of leadership style, right? You don't always have to agree. You don't always have to take someone's advice, but if they are heard and they know they're heard, they're going to get on board with whatever the ultimate decision is. And that was very much his philosophy, which is something I've kept and try to use myself.
Oh.
Yeah, that is super cool. It sounds like it was really amazing relationship. Did you see him as a mentor and a coach at that time, or just simply your boss?
Oh, absolutely a mentor. I didn't realize that's what I was getting, right? When I signed up for
Yeah.
that job, right? Because it was just a job. I was a 20-something kid, right? And had no idea that it would turn into the relationship that it did. I am still very good friends with Alan to this day, but and can always go to him if I need some advice or an ear. But just the way that he really wanted people to be able to get on board. And he knew that that was the best possible way. He also knew that people will talk to his assistant when they won't necessarily talk to him, right? So if I understood what was happening and why it was happening, then I could be almost a proxy, right? When communicating with the people in the company who maybe didn't have the nerve or the desire to go to the CEO to see what he had to say. So,
That's
How
brilliant.
smart. How absolutely smart. No wonder he built this massive tab business, the alternative board business. So, do you see this same philosophy in which he interacted with you and worked with you? Did it go across the board in the business? Meaning he did this with others. He taught the coaches how to do these things. Tell me about that philosophy and how it bled through to the other parts of his business.
yeah, he absolutely did that with his executive team always. And Alan is the type that does believe still to this day that the good ideas come from any place inside of the company, right? So he made it himself available because you never know where the good idea is going to come from, right? And so, yeah, I think he really did work hard to make sure that the team understood why we were doing things when there were plans, strategic plans put into place, why we were doing that kind of work, what the intended outcome was. And like you said before, the buy-in at Tab was always very, very high. And I absolutely think his transparency, which makes people feel better as well, right? When they know why something's happening, it's not a secret. Nobody ends up creating their own story, which is great and helps keep the company in alignment for certain.
Wow. So, Dana, I have to know how that transition from executive assistant to executive came about.
Yeah, so there were a few steps in there, Tracy. It didn't happen overnight, but fortunately, I know I've said a lot of nice things about Alan, but I'm going to say one more. He saw a skill set in me that I didn't necessarily
Wow.
see in myself, and it was his idea to transition me into the training department. So he was also the kind of guy that was willing to let me go, even though I don't think he really wanted to. He knew that that was what was best for me, and then ultimately what was best for Tab. So that began my journey. I was kind of pushed out of the nest, to be honest with you, Tracy. He was like, I think you should do this, go. And I was like, are you sure? A little bit of panic, but, but figured it out pretty quickly. Loved my time in training. And I was so honored to be able to help take that training program global as Tab expanded internationally. And over the course of time there, I got what I called my seat at the table, right? I wanted to be part of the leadership team very, very much. Was able to do that, but I also decided that I was going to do that by going in and asking for that seat at the table, right? And letting them know that my goals there were more than just in the training department, that I wanted to have an impact on the business more globally. And fortunately, they allowed me that seat at the table. And that was really kind of the end of the transition, sort of, right? The beginning of a whole new type of career for me.
I think it's beautiful how Alan believed in you and saw in you things that you had not yet recognized. And then, like you said, okay, you're going to fly now. I'm pushing you out of the nest. He knew you would succeed. He knew you would rise. He had given you the mentoring you need to be a leader. And then over time, you moved into this executive role at the alternative board. Um, so I want to shift gears just a little bit because this
Yeah.
idea of leadership for a woman this is my perception, and when we talk to women every week, it's not easy. We don't all see ourselves as leaders. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think that's absolutely correct. I think very few women probably start out seeing themselves as the leader, and it's something that maybe that they evolve to versus desire straight out of the gate. And in my career, I have seen far too many women who have wonderful capabilities to lead who, for one reason or another, have felt like that they maybe couldn't, or because they had a particular title attached to their name or their position, weren't allowed to be leaders. And to me, that's an absolute shame, because when people really do own who they are and own what they do, they can lead from any chair in the organization. And I firmly believe that.
I love that. So they can lead from any position. Do you think that they can lead from any skill set? Because I think most of the time people think they have to have this big vision and see 10 years down the road and what's going to happen in order to lead. But do you think that people can lead with any skill set? Maybe not that big vision?
I absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I'm not the type of person who sits down and writes a 10-year plan for myself, right? So I am not necessarily a big vision thinker. I think I'm more of an implementer, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that I can't lead an implementation, right? It doesn't mean that I can't take my skill set, use what I'm good at to make an impact on the greater organization, not just in my little department, right? And yeah, so I absolutely believe that it's more of a culture and a mindset than it is a skill set, right? And you don't have to have the biggest skill set. What you have to have is the right mindset and the right culture fit for your organization. And then if you have that, then you can absolutely lead, because you can always pick up skills, right? You can always learn something new. It's the mindset that's really going to take you far.
Yeah.
Wow, I want to address more of that mindset in just a second, but I wanted to back up. Um, just remember a few years ago helping a franchise organization find a president. They were interviewing help. So basically, we used our assessment tool to kind of help with that.
Mhm.
And one of the things they pointed out, and I thought it was really interesting, is where Tracy was going, that we usually think of a leader as a visionary, right? And someone that can cast that vision and get you to capture it and then, execute on it. But your point is they don't have to be. What I remember about that franchise organization is they specifically said that. They said, we are actually looking for a project manager. We'll set the vision, the chairman, the CEO will set the vision. We're looking for someone that's a president and can execute, which is more to what you were saying, Dana, that we are all differently skill set. We all have different skills, but it's more about the mindset that they fit in with that overall vision and that culture of the organization. And then we can use those skills in wherever they are. So talk a little bit more for me on mindset. Can you describe what you mean by that? Is it simply they have a similar set of values as the organization, or is it more like a grit, tenacity thing? Or what do you mean by mindset?
I think that's a really great question, Rebecca. I'm going to stall for half a second while I come up with the answer. Um, I think you just have the mindset that you want to have an impact beyond
Mhm.
your to-do list, right? At you, right, beyond what you've been assigned to do, right? And there's so much that goes into building a good culture at an organization. And to me, that's really where people have the opportunity to lead. Whether you don't need to have a big strategic 10-year vision to understand the culture of the company, be a proponent for that culture, and really lead by example by living that culture and kind of preaching that culture to others and calling it out when somebody's not part of the culture. And that really can be done from, like I said, any seat in the organization. It's really about saying, I am a contributing member of this organization, and as so, I'm going to protect the culture and protect the work family that is there. And I think with that type of mindset, anybody can participate.
Wow. Just the way you frame that on calling people out who are not in alignment with the culture, um, and the imagery of protecting the organization. Like, what do you do when you have somebody that isn't necessarily protecting the organization or isn't necessarily like the quote unquote right culture?
Yeah. Well, that's a coaching opportunity. I would think in most instances, right? That's an opportunity to have a confrontation or a carefrontation. We like to call that at the Entrepreneur Source, right? Because you do care about these people, but absolutely a time to have the right conversation. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? We all want everybody to show up as well as they can every day, right? And that doesn't mean every day we're all going to be on our A game. That's certainly not going to happen. But when somebody's unable to kind of show up with their A game the vast majority of the time, then it's time to have that conversation and find out, we don't always know what's going on in somebody's personal life, and you could be encountering them on their worst day, right? Or their best day. And I think if we keep that in mind when we have those conversations, see if there's something going on that maybe needs to be a little light needs to be shown on it, and have a conversation. I think that when those conversations are approached with compassion and empathy, they generally go pretty well. And then it's up to the person who you had that conversation with, right? They're either going to kind of get on board and change their mindset, or, it's maybe not the right fit for them, and it's time for them to find a better fit.
So true. You've in this conversation, I'm seeing, as a scientist, of course, a few things, this cultural piece, the sharing of values, but also you're hitting on a lot of markers that we would consider motivation markers or grit markers, where if we are fully committed to the vision of the organization and the culture of the organization, and we even make sacrifices for that, then we're going to get the results and we're going to rise. But if we're focused more on me, that's not going to happen, or instant gratification. So I want to shift gears just a little bit. Um, let's talk about an aha moment that you've had. Maybe it was an obstacle, a challenging situation. You felt like you were banging your head, whatever. Tell us about that and what maybe a lesson was that came out of that.
Sure. I think for me personally, one of my toughest professional challenges was to put on a global, international, virtual conference during COVID, right? When everybody went home. And this was a pretty big endeavor where we were going to have live content in every place Tab was in the world at that moment. So it literally was going to be a 24-hour around the globe conference. Big undertaking involving a lot of people, a lot of speakers, time zones. If you could have seen my time zone chart, you would have had a good laugh. Trying to keep everything straight and know what time it was in every part of the world at the same time. I am not a high detail person in general. And if we're talking DISC scores, my C is a 6. So it's very, very low. So keeping things organized was an immense challenge. And I knew that I really wasn't the right person for the job, but I was the person they had for the job. So there was no opportunity to say, maybe somebody else should do this, right? It just had to get done. It was very, very stressful for me, and it was not an enjoyable period of time in my life. It was probably a month leading up to it where I was not myself really at all, and it was so stressed out, and it was coming out in places in my personal life, which is very unlike me. I'm pretty good at keeping it compartmentalized, but I was probably not the most enjoyable person to live with, and really just didn't like what the stress was doing to me. So decided, it was actually my husband's recommendation. He's like, maybe you should try to meditate. You're so stressed out, and I was like, you're right. I am so stressed out, and I'm going to try. So I did try, and that is really what put me on a path of great change. Learning to meditate, which started as a reaction, but now has become a proactive thing that I do daily, has really just helped me become a much more settled, comfortable, and present human being. And I am really, as much as that situation was not perfect, was not enjoyable, the result of it, I wouldn't have changed, right? And finding meditation for me has been a really important part of just my own personal development and the way I view myself and talk to myself. And that's really been super impactful, not just in my professional life, as you might imagine, but in all aspects of my life. So I was very, very glad for the outcome. And the conference mostly went off without a hitch, mostly. So, there's always a technology problem right at the beginning, right? Because it wouldn't be fun if that didn't happen. But did get through it. It did get through it. Wasn't my most shining moment, but it did happen. So
we survived.
Yes.
Just to recap, so you took one of the most stressful periods in history of this century, and then added an international complex conference to it. I just want to make sure I'm just making sure I'm getting the story clear.
Yeah.
And then ignited this realm of stress beyond imagination. So what do you think you tapped into with the meditation? People talk about higher power, people talk about calm. Like what do you think you really tapped into?
I think for me, it really was about my own self-talk. And I don't know what else to call it, Tracy, but the things I would internally say to myself. So during a period of stress at that time, I was like, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't fair, like all this kind of, negative blah, right? And instead, I think what happened is I have just become much more accepting of my own skill set, my own limitations, and really learn to be okay about that, right? I think as women, it's like we have to look perfect. We have to pretend we're perfect. We have to, none of us are perfect. And I really got okay with that, like at a level that I couldn't have necessarily predicted before. I am perfectly imperfect is what I tell my husband all the time. And I have really learned that that's okay, right? And it makes it easier to laugh at yourself and enjoy your life a little more and make better decisions when you see something coming that you're just maybe isn't the right thing for you. Better with my own boundaries, saying no has been a really important, and feeling okay, not feeling guilty, because I had to say no to something that I really couldn't take on. And a couple of years ago, saying no to anything would have been almost impossible. But even if I was able to do it, I would have felt so bad about it that it's just, would have not, it felt better to say yes and be overwhelmed than to say no and feel like I was disappointing somebody. And I've really gotten much better at understanding that, everybody has to say no some of the times. The people in your life that truly are, understand you and know who you are not going to, really freak out just because you said no. They're going to understand why you said no, as long as you take the time to explain that to them. And I don't have to feel guilty about it anymore. That's been a lovely gift to myself.
Nice.
It is neat, isn't it? That self-acceptance. It's actually even a form of self-love when you think about it, where you're protecting your boundaries and your mental health and your time and using your skills wisely, etc. So you took time to care, for you
Yeah.
in many ways, and meditation did that for you. I mean, it's interesting to watch you, Dana. Your energy when you talk about it is just like went up, 6 decibels. I mean, it was just like boom, boom, boom. You can see how it's really changed you. So I'm hoping folks that are listening in will take this advice, hint, hint, that
Yeah.
it might be time for some meditation.
And
So,
it doesn't take more than 10 minutes a day. I mean, I'm not sitting there going through hours of, any kind of deep meditation. It's a quick 10 minutes in the morning and I'm good for the day, right? So it doesn't have to be a big giant chunk of time, right? It's just putting it into practice.
and making it a priority.
Yes.
So these things that you learned through Alan and going from an executive assistant to an executive to a leader, and then going through, some of these difficult times and the lessons that you learned, how now are you integrating everything into this ZOR coaching program that you're developing at the Entrepreneur Source? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, ZorCoach is really kind of the people that will be encountering us at the beginning of their franchisor journey, right? That's a stressful time for people. And there's a lot to get done. And there's very little guidance on how to set up a good discovery day or how to, what kind of presentations should you be making to your interested parties. How do you award a franchise and all of these good things. I think it's very important that we meet these franchisors where they are. They're going to all come to us at different places with different needs. So I think just like any employee that I would encounter, we're going to meet them where they are, and we're going to help them figure out where they need to go. Coaching will be a part of this. So, bringing a little bit of calmness and a little bit of you can do this, will be certainly part of it, and allowing these people a safe space to kind of vent their frustrations and concerns and worries, which is hard when you're the owner of a business or you're trying to get a franchise off the ground. So I think that will really just be so much of it is me learning to meet people where they are and really hear them and connect with them and make sure I understand their journey and where they're coming from and where they want to go. So absolutely think that everything that I've learned from day one in franchising is going to be poured into this program, and that experience of really listening to people, encouraging leaders to find other leaders inside of their organization, right? And kind of passing that philosophy to the people at the top of their franchisor systems, that they have leaders, they just don't even know that they're there yet, right? They already are in the organization. They just have to find them. So I'm very excited to be able to spread that message a little bit while we really help emerging franchisors do things in a way that will hopefully save them a lot of heartache in the long run, right? Finding people that are great matches to their system, that are right culturally for them. And we all know that when that happens, everybody is more successful. So I look forward to helping them do that.
That's exciting. It sounds like you are helping organizations do what you experienced with Alan Fishman, where he recognized talent that you didn't even realize you had within yourself. And now
Yeah.
you're do you feel like you're passing it forward?
I am trying very hard to pass it forward. I try to encourage everyone around me to step into their own, right? Whatever that looks like for them. And I think the perception that a leader has to be a dominant personality that is really hard driving and just really out there is a bad perception, right? It's a bad perception. That's certainly a type of leadership, and we need those leaders too. But we also need leaders who understand how to support other people and understand how to delegate and how to collaborate. And all of those aspects are also part of leadership. It's just not the one we normally see when we say the word leadership out loud, right?
I'm wondering, to clarify for folks that are listening in, Dana, the difference between a emerging franchisor hiring, let's say, an FSO, or engaging Zor coaching. Can you help define the difference and how in some ways they might actually overlap?
So ZorCoach is really is a coaching program. We're not going to do any of the work for them. We're going to help them and guide them. Very much, we give them the playbook. We really do give them the playbook about how to set up their processes well, but they have to do all of that work. We're giving them kind of the framework, and they have to color inside the lines, right? And make that part their own. But we're really going to be providing them with templates and guides and things that they can alter to get their system up and running as fast as possible. So they don't have to start by, pulling up a blank PowerPoint and going, what should I talk about when I explain our marketing program, right? We're going to kind of give them an outline and help them understand what should be there. But it's going to be up to them to do all of that work, right? So we will be guiding them and helping them, but we won't be providing any sort of consulting or work for them. So does that answer your question?
Yeah,
I feel like I
it
may not have.
does. By
Okay.
distinguishing the difference between coaching and consulting, right? We're not actually going to go in there and do the legal work for you, or write that
Right.
manual for you, or whatever, or do the sales for you. We're going to coach you and come alongside of you to inspire you and to edify you, etc. So there's a big difference between coaching and consulting. So thank you for separating those pieces out for us.
Yeah, we're super excited to get it off the ground, and just really excited to kind of pass the entrepreneur source philosophy on to others, because we certainly know it works after 40 years of successful placements, right? And have seen that's the other special thing about the entrepreneur source. They're not just a franchisor themselves, right? But they work with hundreds of them. So the stories and the experience accumulated over that time, they've definitely seen it done the wrong way and definitely have seen it done the right way. So we're very excited to help encourage more franchisors do it the right way, right? And find the right people and really make their organizations a happy, healthy place. And that's what, that'd be lovely.
And profitable, right? We want them
Yes, of
profitable, right?
course. Of course, yes, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I'm glad you're here to pass on this work. So, how can our listeners and anyone who works for an emerging franchise find you?
Oh, great question. Thank you, Tracy. They can go to zorcoach.com. So that's ZorCoach.com. That is the easiest way to find us, but you can also find me on LinkedIn and reach out that way. But we'd be thrilled to hear from you and thrilled to help you get your franchise up off the ground with a stable full of successful, happy franchisees.
Terrific.
Fabulous. Thank you for joining us, Dana. I'm excited for this new venture. I love hearing how the foundation was laid with Alan and the the alternative board. And now we're taking everything you learned, including when you banged your head, trying to put that international conference together virtually during COVID, and how you're putting it into action to help emerging franchisors. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Tracy, you always have such a great wrap up. I'm going to turn it over to you. What are your thoughts about Dana end this incredible interview.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I love how you circle your questions around all the time. The way you process information always never ceases to amaze me. But what I have in mind right now is something that Dana said a little while ago. She was talking about carefrontation.
Yes.
I think that you are so carefrontational, like you want to help people transform and make all of these amazing changes in the most caring way with the most genuine of intentions and transparency. And I have to commend you for that. I find it really refreshing.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Hopefully, we'll just get the word out there and others will figure it out too.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate both of you. And to those of you listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged, make sure to like, comment, share this interview with those that you know will benefit from it. And then we'll see you next week on another episode.